Silvio Notarbartolo urodził się w 1944 roku w miejscowości Novara w północnych Włoszech. Od dziecka cechowała go nieprzeciętna ciekawość świata i otwartość na ludzi. Jako młody chłopak rozpoczął naukę na Politechnice w Mediolanie. W 1966 roku, kiedy Silvio miał 22 lata, dostał możliwość wyjazdu na praktyki do fabryki w Brzegu Dolnym pod Wrocławiem. Polska była wówczas pogrążona w specyficznej i nieprzyjaznej rzeczywistości PRL-u. Mimo to Silvio zdecydował się pojechać, wiedziony swoją wrodzoną ciekawością świata i ludzi. Ta podróż znacząco wpłynęła na jego późniejsze życie. Jako niepokorny, młody człowiek pochodzący z wolnego kraju, nie chciał podporządkować się twardym zasadom panującym wtedy w Polsce. Zwiedził cały kraj, podróżując bez żadnych dokumentów oraz zezwoleń, poznając nowych ludzi oraz ich obyczaje od podszewki. Dziś mieszka w Mediolanie i częściowo też w Krakowie, gdzie po latach wrócił urzeczony miastem i rozpoczął swój biznes. Zapraszamy do wysłuchania opowieści o perypetiach młodego podróżnika, naszego przyjaciela Silvio Notarbartolo.
Buongiorno, I'm Silvio Notarbartolo. I'm Italian, I'm living in Milano, and at this moment I'm not in Milano, I'm in Krakow, where I have a business. I started this business more or less 20 years ago. But today we are not speaking about my business. We are speaking why I'm here and when it was the first time that I was in Krakow. And we have to go back many, many years ago. I was 22, I was a student, and it was the year 1966. I was studying engineering, chemical engineering in Politecnico Milano. One day, I think it was spring, I went to the university, and in the, how do you call this? There was a piece of paper, an advertising, and we are searching a student who can speak German and who would like to go to Poland for 3 months in a chemical factory. So I was curious about Poland. Poland, in my imagination, at that time was a place where there was a communism. And in Italy we had one of the biggest communist party in the free world. We call it free world. And so we didn't have really communism in Italy. We had a strong party, but not a communist. So in Poland there was an applied communist, and this was the first interest to me to apply to this request of summer holidays, special summer holidays. The second interesting thing was, don't laugh, there was a lot of stories about very nice girls in Poland. And there was also a very incredible story now, we think this is very incredible, that if you go to Poland with the nylon stockings, you will be the winner. So, but the third thing was that this was also something interesting for my profession of chemical engineer, because to go to another place and to learn how the production is really made, it could be interesting instead to pass 3 months on the seaside and doing nothing. And let me say also that in my mind, I had the willingness all the time to travel and to know people, to meet people. And I started when I was 14 to travel because I was obliged to take care of my older sister, and she was traveling, studying German. Anyhow, I applied, and due to the fact that I was the only one who applied, I won, and I was called by the university that they give me all the instruction to travel, where to go, which was the name of the factory. Now I don't remember exactly which was the name of the factory. I remember Rokita, Zakładu, blah, blah, blah. I don't remember exactly. But it is in Brzeg Dolny, near Wrocław. Then I discovered that there was another student, not of engineering, who was also coming to Poland in the same period of time. We met and we decided to come together because he had the car. I didn't have the car at that time, so we decided to go by car in Poland. We tried, first of all, to find a map of Poland. It was impossible in Italy to find a road map, impossible. So when we started our trip, we passed through Switzerland and we found a fantastic map of Poland. And I will tell you why it's fantastic later on. And of course, we have prepared a small luggage. We have not many things to do. At that time, there was no mobile phone, nothing special, or electronics. But I had my little apparatus in which we were sliding some disc inside, click, and they started to make music. 33 around per minute. And I took this with some batteries, and we started to travel in the direction of Poland. It was a long trip. And let's say that when we arrive on the border of Poland and we enter in Poland, we discover a couple of things. First, that the roads of Poland were horrible. And any few kilometers was a sign with a strange words that we didn't understand immediately. Objazd. Deviazione in Italian. and then you have to go out from the street and later on come back. It was very complicated. So but we had the map. And when we started to ask questions to the people opening the map, this was a disaster because this was a Swiss map in which Poland, the part of Poland where we were considered Germany. The border was not changed because at that time, Switzerland didn't recognize the new border of Poland. So when we opened this map and asked if we have to go, we have to go, they said, this is a map of the bad Italians. So it was the first impact with Poland. It was not our fault, but it was a Swiss fault. Just to tell that at that time, Europe was not like today. It was very difficult to travel. Each country you were going, you had a different currency. It was really complicated. And at that time, I was a student. I had no many experience. But at the end, my friend who was driving took me to Brzeg Dolny. And I had a room in a horrible hotel. And he went away. We made a pact that after 3 months, we should meet again in Brzeg Dolny or in Wrocław. And we had to go back to Italy together. So I arrived there. I knew that the next morning at 6 o'clock, I had to go to the factory. So I slept a little bit. I didn't have, I think, any lunch or breakfast or dinner because the hotel was with nothing. And next morning at 6 o'clock, I went to the factory. And this was another surprise because there was the director of the factory who was welcoming me, taking me in the laboratory. Let me say that they were producing ethanol, ethylic alcohol. And this incredible director took me to the laboratory and told me, now we test the quality of the product. So he filled up a little glass with ethanol and 2 or 3 drops of water, and then give me a glass for me and glass for him, and na zdrowie. And the first thought that I had is that we are in a chemical factory which could explode, and the director probably 10 minutes we'll be drunk. But the second thing that I felt that I was not ready to drink. So I had a terrible pain on my stomach, and I had to go to the toilet. And when I finished, I discovered there was no toilet paper. Oh, the surprise! So from the toilet, I was screaming, "Ah, where is the toilet paper? Where is the toilet paper?" And somebody came to me that each of us has his own toilet paper. You have to buy your. Anyhow, these are the first impact of this factory. And I passed 1 month in this factory, and I had nothing to do there. It was not interesting at all. I didn't learn anything about chemistry and chemical plant. But I learned a lot of things about the people. I had the obligation to stay in Brzeg-Dolny during the week, and during the weekend I could go to Wrocław. And two little stories. One is in Brzeg-Dolny. One, I was invited by a colleague of the factory to have a dinner at home, and I went there around 7 o'clock in the evening, and there was a nice dinner for everybody, and then they started to drink a lot of vodka. And when, after a couple of hours, the man of the family was totally drunk, the women came to me and said, "And now he is drunk, what we do now?" And I said, "I go to sleep," and went away. So the other thing is that during the weekend I had really nothing to do. Also because at that time Wrocław was a very strange big town. If I remember well, quite 100% of the people was below 30 years old. And there was no old people. And was totally destroyed. The only building which were working really was the university, the student house with the rooms, the mensa for eating, and the little bar. The rest of Wrocław was dark, dirty, and very destroyed. And I had nothing to do. I was in the student house, I met people, but I was going to restaurants. There was a couple of restaurants. And this is the other story. So there was a long list of in the menu of food. But when you ask, "I want this," they said, "No, we don't have it." "No, we don't have it." At the end, I understood that there was only a couple of things, and you have to eat what was present really, and not in the menu. So this was another sign that that the economy was not working very well in Poland. You have to understand that I was coming from Italy, where at the same year we had everything. It was no problem to have any kind of food, any kind of goods. So coming to a place where you could not find either food sometimes was a surprise for me. And this was the first surprise and my first rejection of communism, because I didn't like it very much. And after 1 month, I was tired to be only in this place. Yes, I visited Zakopane, but I had to go to the state organization for tourism, and then I could not go alone. I had to be with somebody with me who could control what I was doing, what was not. So I didn't feel very free to go around. But I visited Zakopane, and I visited Krakow, of course, with this system. And Krakow was a fantastic town also at that time. Krakow has not changed much, at least the old town of Krakow. I mean, it's exactly the same. It was well maintained. So, Krakow. Krakow is a fantastic town again. But I learned traveling between Brzeg Dolny and Wrocław, I learned one thing, that I go to the ticket counter for train and say, student, and they give me quite free tickets because it costs nothing. And I tell this because there is another story later on. I will tell you about the story of the tickets of the train. So at a certain moment, I decided to go away from Wrocław. Now coming back to Wrocław, you were asking me, you want to know why there were no old people? Because at the end of the war, the border were totally changed. I told you I had the map of the old Poland, but the new Poland have picked up Wrocław, which was the old German town, Breslau. We call it Breslavia in Italian. And in the meantime, a part of the eastern Poland was moved and now is in Bielorussia. Grodno. Grodno was Polish town. So all the German went away from Wrocław, so it was empty, and the Polish government decided at that time to build up a university to start a new generation of people there. So actually it was only students and few professors. And the rest of the population was few German that didn't like to go away. But this was Wrocław. Anyhow, I decided to go away and to travel around Poland. And I knew that this could be very risky. Because at that time, to be in a place in Poland, you have to have an authorization. So I should go to the police, tell that I would like to travel around Poland, and they will follow me, and they will control me, and I decided that this was not the case. So I started to go away with quite nothing. And I was also finishing my money, by the way. And I was starting to go either by train or by car, stopping the few cars that were still at that time in Poland and go with them. And the first problem that I had is that every time that I had to go to sleep, I could not go to hotel because I had to show the document. So when I was in a little town, or small villages, I was going to the bar and started to make friendship with the people and drink with them and sing and play the piano, music. And then I was invited to some house and I could sleep for free every place in Poland, anytime. And when I was in a big town, like I was in Warsaw, I was going to the student house. This was summer time, so most of the students were not there. So there was plenty of free bed to go to sleep. But I had to avoid to go in public places like hotels. I decided also not to visit many museums because this was a point of control that I didn't like to. But this was a travel just to speak with the people, to know people. And I met a lot of people in this way. I don't remember all of them. But when I was in Warsaw, I realized that I finished my money. And this was still the second month, so I had to stay more than 1 month. So with the last money that I had, I tried to phone in Italy my mother. My father was not living more at that time. I phoned her, I told her, hey, I'm well, but I have no money. I don't know how to go back I'm traveling in Poland. So, but you have to stay in the factory. You cannot travel. It's forbidden. You have no document. I said, this is my problem. I need money. Can you send me some money? It's impossible to send money. So at that time, it was not easy to send money from Italy to Poland. But she told me, call me in 1 hour. So when I was calling her back, luckily there was a delegation in Warsaw of the company ZNIA, which was the company where my father was working. So we had a lot of friends in this company. And by the way, this was also the company where I was working after my university. And in this group of Italian, there was one friend, a very good friend of my family, who was at that time the vice director of the company. So it was an important man. So my mother told me, go to the hotel, I don't remember the name. There is Mr. Belloni, and he will help you. So I went there, and I was entering the hotel. I was a little bit scared because I was trying to avoid hotels. So I asked her, I had to speak with Dr. Belloni in German. And Dr. Belloni came out and said, hey, see, how are you? What are you doing, Paul? So we spoke 10, 15 minutes, but he had to work. So, and he gave me $100. $100 in the 1966 in Poland was a fortune. With $100, I was surviving and traveling and going around eating for another month and a half. The only thing that you have to do is not to go to the bank, but you have to go to some place where they will change in black money, and you will get 10 times more than the normal currency exchange rate. But during this trip, I found out a few things. First, that not all was property of the state. There were very small little private companies. I remember one of those who was making baby coats. And it was a man who was producing this, but he was telling me that the taxation was horribly high, but for the private people. But he was working, he had a good return of his investment, so it was nice. The second thing is that there were not many cars, and mostly it was very difficult to find spare parts of the cars. So there was a huge, big market of spare parts on the open air in all the big town of Poland. So there was a huge place to sell and buy used part of car. But this I discovered that still exists. There are a lot of companies also today that in Poland are selling part of car. I can find here in Poland spare parts of my Alfa Romeo. I don't have it anymore, but I could take the spare parts here, but not in Italy. Now, the other thing that I discovered is that a lot of people was working and living outside of Poland. A lot of immigrants were also in the United States. And they were sending dollars to the family. So the Polish state needs this dollar. And with the dollar, you could buy everything. You could buy nothing with the zloty because the shops were quite empty. But if you had dollar, you could buy everything. It was a special shop. Now is the name of the bank, PKO. But the PKO at that time was a shop where you could buy everything with the dollars. PEVEX, but it was a part of the bank PKO. I remember PKO written on that. And then probably it was also PEVEX. But it was property of the bank, of the national bank. So when I have gotten this $100 in Warsaw, I made one very crazy thing. Because I decided to go to Gdansk, but I didn't like to go with a train, blah, blah. So I went to the airport. I bought a ticket. It was with me. I met a student from, I forgot to tell you, I met a student of Holland, and we went to the airport. He also was traveling like me with no documents. We went to airport. We bought 2 tickets of the flight from Warsaw to Gdansk. Nobody was checking anything. We jumped into the airplane. It was an old airplane with the and we were sitting near a lady. The airplane went up. We arrived to Gdansk. The airport is on the seaside. It was windy, so whoa, we made a landing which was very scary. But during the trip, of course, I was speaking with the lady near me. She was speaking a little bit of German, and I was explaining that I'm a student, Italian student, that my friend is a student from Netherlands, and we are trying with no documents. She said to me, where you sleep tonight? I said, we don't know. Every night we have to find a solution for that. You can come by us. So we went to the house of this lady. It was the husband and two girls, and they had only one sleeping room. So we were sleeping all together. This was another incredible experience in my life, because in Italy, something like that could never happen, never. So I understood also that the way of being together, also in the family, is not exactly like in Italy. In Italy was a little bit separation between women and men. It was all together. I don't know why. When I was in Gdansk, I went in two places. One is Opole. No? Sopot, sorry. Sopot, because somebody told me that there was a huge organ in Sopot. So I went there, and I have seen this organ. I asked her to play the organ. Of course, they told me, no, impossible. Then there was a girl who was working in Wrocław, who have the parents in a small village near Gdansk. And I decided to visit her. I took the train, and I went there. She was surprised I was there, because, what are you doing here? Hey, I'm in Gdansk, so I visit you. But she made a very strange thing. She told me, why we don't go together to see the military airport? So we went to the military airport outside, and we were seeing the Russian, how they call it, the airplane, the Russian airplane. So in this moment, I was thinking that if somebody will catch me now, I will be in jail, and I don't know when I will be back to Italy. What else? This is the last thing which, in my opinion, was interesting to see. Slowly, I went back to Wrocław, and I decided to pass the last 2-3 weeks in Wrocław, and I met a girl there. She was working on the bar, and this is another incredible story, because she didn't speak any language, and I didn't speak Polish. So we could not speak. We could do many things, but not speak. And there was a student of architecture who was coming to me and said, Silvio, why you don't go with this girl? I have another place. I have in the student house. Why I don't like to go there with the girl in the student. I have my house. These are the keys. So he gave me the keys. And very frankly, this was my first girl in my life. And for me, Elżbieta is Elżbieta. And I have only a few things left from my trip. One of these things are the picture of Elżbieta. The second thing is something that I sent to my sister. Is a postcard. I have a postcard that I sent from Kraków to my sister in Italy. And when I went in Poland 50 years later to make my investment, she decided to make me a present with this postcard. And it's hanging in my sleeping room in Kraków. So this is the last part of the story, because then I forget to tell you, but 2 months before, I discovered that my Italian friend that should take me back to Italy have decided to go back to Italy, because after 1 month for him was enough to be in Poland. But he didn't phone me, he didn't tell me anything. So I was left alone. I had not the money to go back to Italy at that moment. But fortunately, in Wrocław, I met an Italian who had a little car. He was from Genova. And he told me, "No, you come with me." And he found another girlfriend of Elżbieta. We have passed a couple of weeks very nice all together. And these two girls went with us to the border. And the last night was full of, don't go away. I don't want you to go away. But in Polish, I don't know how to tell it, but they were crying, both. And the story finished because after the trip, I was writing a letter to Elżbieta in Italian. She was answering in Polish. I didn't understand what she was telling to me. She probably didn't know what I was telling to her. But the third letter was a lot of, how do you call it? Exclamation mark. Silvio, Silvio, Silvio. And I said, oh, how much she loves me. And a few months later, this architect who gave me his house went to Milano, and I asked him to translate this letter. The third letter was written, Silvio, don't write me. I am engaged with, I have a boyfriend now. So please don't write me letter anymore. And this is the finish of the story. I forget just one thing. I was telling you about the ticket of the train. And when I was on the train between Gdansk and this small village, I don't remember the name, of course I went to the ticket counter and said, student, and they gave me a very cheap, let me say, ticket. But there was a man who was controlling the ticket at that time, and he went to me and told me, Kartka studentki. So I took out of my pocket my card of student of Polytechnic in Milano. I said, this is my card. And he was looking, said, Kartka studenci Polski. And I said, nie rozumiem. And he started to scream like hell. Mówi po polsku, nie rozumiem. Mówi po polsku, blah, blah, blah. After 15 minutes, he went away. And I didn't pay any penalty. But this is another story. So at that moment, Poland was treating the student outside of Poland as tourist. I was not a tourist, I was a student worker. Now it's different because now I make vice versa. Now I'm an old man who can go to the tram or to the bus in Krakow for free because I'm old, but not in Italy. In Italy, that's impossible. You have to buy a low-cost ticket for old people, but you have to buy for all the months, not every time. So this something happens in one way, something in other ways. And again, this is a sign that I hope will not change. Poland is helping old people in some extent. And this is something that in Italy doesn't exist really. So, let's say only one last thing. When I retired, it was a complicated period of my life because I didn't like to retire, very frankly. And I didn't like a lot of things at that moment. And I had a premium because I was retiring earlier retirement, and the company was trying to push me out because the company was going bankrupt, so I needed to lay off a lot of people. So after many years in Italy, there is a system in which you spare every year 1 month, and the company takes this month. So after 30 years, you have 30 months of salary that you can get immediately without taxation. On top of that, to tell me that, to help me to go away, they gave me 3 years of salary. And so I decided maybe it was a good idea. But part of this money is in Krakow. It's part of my business in Krakow. And I decided to come back to Poland because I wanted to invest in a country which could come to Europe. 20 years ago, Poland was not in Europe. And I had to decide which one, and of course I decided for Poland and for Krakow, of course, because Krakow is one of the beautiful, beautiful town in the world. Krakow, the old town of Krakow is like a little village, but full of beautiful things. The rest of Krakow is nothing special. It's nice, but it's nothing special. But the center of Krakow is special. Just to give you an example, if you go to Prague, Prague is a beautiful town, but doesn't exist a center like Krakow. You have a castle on one side, a bridge on the river, then you have a nice square with a big orologio, you call it, it's a mechanical clock. But one is there, one is there. There is not a real center of the town. If you go to Bratislava, it's more or less like Krakow, but so small. The center of Krakow is 2 miles by 1 mile, so it's a fantastic big old city. And it's very well preserved, very well. So that's the reason that I'm back in Krakow. Well, the business, I started to come here with the idea to buy apartments, to renew them and resell it. This was the first idea. By the way, I didn't come immediately to Krakow. I wanted to invest in Krakow, but I have to establish let's say, a system in which I had people who could help me on this investment. And the only people that at that time that I knew was a girl who was in Katowice. And so my base was in Katowice. And my first house in Poland that I bought in Poland was in Katowice, not in Krakow. And it was also my first house at home. So I didn't have any property before the house in Katowice. I have hereditated now some property, but at that time I had nothing. So I bought an apartment in Katowice because I had to go there because the person that I knew were living there, and Katowice were a horrible hotel. I decided to buy a house because I didn't like to go to hotel. But then I met with some of these ladies who were in the real estate. I was pressing them to search something in Krakow. So I went here and then I met the man who had the property of 50% of the building where now I'm living. It was, the building was 50% of this man and 50% another man. And they were fighting together. And there was an administration nominated by the Kurt. And I bought my first apartment here. And also in this case was an adventure because when I decided to buy it, I told this man, we agreed on the price, and I told him, give me a couple of days because I have to collect the money and we have to go to the notary. And after 2 days, when I was collecting money, I came here and he told me that he had found somebody who was paying a little bit more and he had sold the house. And I made one of my horrible joke because I told him, really? Because you told me and you promised to sell it to me with somebody who was listening. So I will go to the court and you will be obliged to give me this apartment at the price that you have agreed with me. You are obliged because by law. And if this doesn't work, I have to tell you that I'm Sicilian. And if you want, instead to go to the court, I send you a couple of friends from Sicily. And now I give you 2 minutes time. I go downstairs, you call the man that you have sold the house, you withdraw from that, I come back and you sell to me, and then we go to the notary, and this is the money to pay. You cannot do that to me. That's your choice. And I went away. After 2 minutes, I went up and said, the house is yours. And later on, I bought from him all the first floor on the street. And I decided not to make the first idea of business to buy and resell, buy and resell. I liked to have an apartment here. I liked to have friends here, and I decided to make a totally different business. I renew the apartments, and I'm selling and renting the rooms to tourists and to anybody who wants to sleep here. It's a fantastic place. It's 200 meters from the central station, 200 meters from Rīnek, the central market square. It's a very silent street. You can park the car. and it works. Now I bought the apartment roughly 20 years ago, and I started the business of renting to tourists, I think in 2006. So now there are 16 years that the job is going right. It's getting better and better, apart, of course, the COVID, and today I have a lot of Ukrainian here. But this is another story. No. The only thing that it happens to me when with this friend from Genoa, we passed the border from Poland to Czech Republic, I think. The Straż Graniczna made me a lot of questions because I was signed as somebody who was not in the right place. So they catch me at Granic, and they was telling me, where have you been during the last couple of months? I said, in Wrocław. Ask people, ask them. No, you were not in Wrocław. They were controlling me in Wrocław. I did not know exactly, but they were controlling me. And when I disappeared, they could not control me for 1.5 months, and I was disappearing. Then I went back, and they didn't tell me anything at that moment. Probably I was considered disappeared, so they finished to control me in Wrocław. But when I arrived in Granica, my name was on the list of the people who was traveling around Poland without permission. But I told them, what do you want from me? I'm going home. You want to take me here? I have to go home. They told me, go.